Meetings being recorded, streamed live on Facebook. If you're shy or need to maintain your anonymity due to political reasons, just disguise your voice and don't put your video on, and everything will be okay. You don't want anyone to get in trouble, that's for sure. Streaming live on Facebook now. Hey, Facebook, how's it going? Everybody that's just lurking around, lurking in the shadows, lurking amongst the shadows for some wellness. Glad to have you listening in and eavesdropping, and everybody that can stop by for, as long as you can stop by. It's Friday night, maybe not the best time for a lot of people, but it's a time when I know I can be here. So, gotta work with what we got. Yeah, I'd like to think that people, maybe some people might have the option of go out and do some frivolous activities or sit home and, watch some wellness videos on YouTube or something. Maybe this is something here. And we got someone else joining. So, hey, I see Patrick coming aboard for his first time, but we've chatted a little bit. So good to see you. How's it going? And as I was just saying, if you don't want to, if you don't want the FBI to recognize your face on the Facebook Live, then just stick with the video off and, put your hand over your mouth there to disguise your voice a little bit. Again, we don't want anyone getting in trouble. Getting in trouble is not the goal. Getting out of trouble, getting out of illness and into wellness is what it's about. Yeah, and again, Griselda is otherwise preoccupied this evening. My regularly scheduled co-host is at a graduation, and so we have our special guest host, our special guest co-advocate, Sister Nikki, joining in. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. And I will get started with tonight's workshop topic, work and serious. It's a workshop, right? Work. So that's the first part. And I'll do a little bit of forward. I do have I have some notes right back here. Mostly what I do is I just I kind of just speak off the cuff, and then I'll refer to my notes. I have some articles that I've written in parts to the book, actually. So I might read some of that at some point in time. All this content, everything that we talk about, this is really not a get it and go type of situation. In contemporary society, you'll hear the term takeaway. Well, what's the takeaway? There is no takeaway. You're not going anywhere. You need to stay here. That's the whole point. Stay with these subjects. I'm going to introduce some subjects, and hopefully some things resonate with some people, but it's not agree, disagree, yes, no, right, wrong. 99.999% of it is not backed by clinical data or third-party double-blind or triple-blind studies. If you saw our previous workshop, The Limits of Science, I make it very clear that a lot of these things are just beyond the scope of science to quantify. So we're getting back to old way of quantifying, and that's listening and see if things make sense. And like that, the way people have done things since forever before science. So a lot of traditional parallels, and we'll maybe call on Tom, or Tom will call on himself and interject some some traditional insight there. That's traditional with a capital T, by the way. Understanding is the soil, an idea is the seed, intention is water, action is the sunlight. So let's add some understanding and intention to this concept. This in itself is an action. This is the first thing that I start people off with. If someone says, hey, I hear you do some personal development stuff. And I say, yes, this is true. These are the first things that I'll say is you have to have a good relationship with the concepts behind the words work and the word serious. Okay, so we've got the word that reflects the concept. So it's important to when we talk, and a lot of these things that I talk about have to do with our relationship with the concept versus the word, because a lot of times the word can have a connotation that maybe doesn't fully reflect the whole scope of the concept. And these are two that are really super important, and contemporary society as a whole probably doesn't have the best relationship with the words work and serious. A lot of times those can invoke negative connotations, and classically work being involuntary servitude and serious being, we need to have a serious talk. Like when we were kids and we did something, the parents say, we need to have a serious talk. So these things that we are exposed to in our habitat as we grow, that's what we relate to. However, our personal development is also work and is also serious, but on a whole different level. So first, let's talk a little bit about, what's work. Let's talk about what those terms are and what some examples of definitions of those words are. And work, I think, is a really key kind of an essence to life. If you look at it in terms of intention, energetic output, focus, trying to accomplish something, right? At its core essence, the concept of work is really putting effort, investing energy, investing effort into something for a desired result, for a desired outcome. So easy, we're putting some intention into our personal development so we grow better understandings around these things. And all this folds back over on itself a whole bunch of times, which I like to always point out because that's pattern recognition. And we're always getting down to the core of things and how things work in nature on this planet as a species, and then back into, okay, then, what are some nuances that our species has been exposed to relatively recently, and what are some nuances that our species has been exposed to in this part of contemporary society versus this part of contemporary society, and that sort of thing. So work, we could say that everything works, right? Everything's working, everything's going out, and basically everything's going out and getting food and finding food, and has to understand all to anthropomorphize a lot of the other species, which we got to watch out for. I always want to point that out too. But we're all kind of doing the same thing, and there's some commonalities with life on this planet. Everything eats, everything excretes, everything has habitat, and everything has forage base. So everything's going through its habitat and finding food, finding shelter, finding water, finding other commonalities, other similar species, or other of the same species. And everything needs to understand how everything else works to do that. Now, again, that's kind of anthropomorphizing, but with animals, we say, it's instinctual, but we all have, memory. And, the animals know, geez, what's a good one? Even some really crazy examples, but the monarch butterfly, makes its migration, but that takes 4 generations to make that full migration. So the butterfly that's, born in North America and then flies down to South America, and I might have that backwards, I'm not sure, but that's not just one butterfly, that's 4 generations. So somewhere there's a memory, there's pattern recognition for everything on, which way to go. And of course the salmon returning home to spawn were hatched, and then they return home to spawn. And of course there's some other factors like instinct, and they say that animals recognize some magnetic energies and sense in the water and all that kind of thing. But anyway, everything's working, everything's acquiring information. Obviously, fish will avoid the same lure after seeing it, and things learn from their mistakes. So isn't that all part of working? And we see what works and what doesn't work. There is another key understanding about the term work. What works and what doesn't work? I say this is the original right and wrong. Does it work or does it not work? Take ourselves back to, early examples of our species. Is this working? Ooh, I have some good examples right here. I have some obsidian. And if I strike this obsidian in a certain way, and if I understand this rock and how the 2 rocks interact together and the angle, and by reading the structure of the obsidian, there's a predictable outcome. But is it working? Is what I'm doing working to make the stone sharp, to shape this stone, or is it not? And if it's not, what am I doing wrong? So key, does it work or does it not work? Is it right? Is this accurate? Is what I'm doing working? Is it right or is it wrong? And I think that there's a lot attached to that. There's a lot attached to, is it working or not working? To unpack that a little bit, we hear that term right and wrong, and we hear it in a moral context a lot. And I say that when it's the moral, after we keep doing something that's not working, I keep chipping this rock away and it's not doing what I want it to do. Somehow there's a part that I have to do something different, right? Remember Einstein, to keep doing the same thing, expecting different results, is the definition of insanity. So is what I'm doing working? If I ignore the signs that what I'm doing is not working, if I don't try to figure out a different way to accomplish the desired outcome, in a lot of cases, I think that's when we're trespassing on that. Is it working or is it not? And we get this feeling, anybody that's ever accomplished something, we know that feeling of, is it working or is it not working? We know the feeling of if it's working or if it's not working. A lot of us from our day jobs think, wow, this hammer is really not working very well to dig this hole. We're like, yeah, this isn't working. We know that. And then if we've got our physical examples, we've also got our mental, emotional, spiritual examples. And our energetic, our energetic pickups, the part of us that senses when something's not working right. And I think we can quantify that a lot with our intellect. But we've been in situations where, you know what, this really isn't working. And a lot of times it's again, to say a job position that we're uncomfortable or not aligned right with our day job position, or in a relationship that's not really functioning. And we know that we're investing energy and somehow we're not getting the return on the investment that we feel we should be getting. That's a very instinctual thing. So does it work or does it not work? Right? We say, here's the business part. Energy is our first commerce. So where our energy goes, there's a natural instinct to be connected to where our energy goes. And there's a natural instinct in, I'm going to say in all life, that picks up if our energy is not being returned, if we're not getting a good ROI on our investment. And I think this is actually where we ended the last class, talking about where our energy goes and paying attention to that. That's a natural thing. Examples in the natural world, and the one that I point to the first is that the bass is going to use the same amount of energy to catch a 2-inch minnow than it does to catch a 4-inch minnow. But it gets twice as good of investment on the 4-inch minnow that it does on the 2-inch minnow. So everything's always monitoring this. And the cheetah catching a gazelle on the plains of Africa, it's got to know, oh, how close can it get? And how much energy is it going to take? And it instinctually has these factors. So what works and what doesn't work, and how things work, and when they're not working, is an instinctual thing. And it's super important that we understand that aspect. That can save us a lot of strife in contemporary society. Speaking of strife in contemporary society, I think that a lot of people can see clearly that there's a lot of things that don't work in contemporary society. I think undoing the overwhelm was last workshop. So, but embracing challenge was the workshop before that. So with all these, and we're always going to get to the meat of the conversation, and we're all here because there's on our own volition, we want our own personal development. That helps us understand. If we understand ourselves, that helps us understand others. If we understand others, that helps us understand ourselves. We see reflections of self and others in society, and we talk a lot about societal influences and the things that build society. Of course, society is built by individuals, but it's important to recognize that when we see something that's not working, it's important to not just ignore that feeling, right? When we say red flags, a lot of it is energetic. So there's a lot of red flags, not to be confused with the traditional red flags with a capital T, but there is a big difference. Traditional red flags with a capital T and contemporary red flags in the energetic sense. We need to know when something's not working. That's critical. Otherwise, we're wasting our energy, we're wasting our efforts, and not growing in relation to our personal development. And that is I think one of the most frustrating, one of the biggest catches in contemporary society is the disconnect from our growth. And how do we undo that? How do we get back on track? What's working in our personal development and what's working in our understanding? I say that because it's a big catch to see that there's a lot of things in contemporary society that aren't working, and that can be overwhelming. And it takes intention, it takes some inner work to be able to sit with these things that are uncomfortable and to be able to sit with some of these challenging issues at hand and really pay attention, not rush to judgment, and actually understand and grow our understanding. And when we say that understanding is a soil, we've got to have enough soil to support the seed. And that, again, the understanding is the soil, the seed is the concept, the intention is the water, and then the action is the sun. Just a kind of a little placeholder about how things work. But if this workshop is regrowing a connection with the word work, right? So we've got the contemporary word association with work, involuntary servitude. So how do we get out of that? Let's grow bigger understanding. Let's add some more information to our understanding about the word work, because that's what allows us to transcend these negative word associations that we had. And so what we want to do, again, is we want to have a positive relationship with the concepts behind the words work and behind the words serious. So circling back around, a lot of us has grown up with the contemporary narrative of work being involuntary servitude, and I have to go to work, not necessarily aligned with our big picture path and our natural inclinations, our natural aptitudes, that kind of thing. So if we grew up with that, that's something that's in our mental habitat. One of our past ones was growing healthy mental habitat. And this is what it's about, to understand ourselves, to understand what's in our habitat. How are we relating to concepts in our habitat? So if we're relating to the concepts of work and serious as a negative, but then we're needing to do our personal development, then we have to reconcile that. So we add more. Let's look at these concepts. Let's look at how these words are being used, and let's add some other things. Oh yeah, work. Well, geez, it's not just involuntary servitude. It's how things work. It's do things work. It's that everything has this natural ROI calculator, if you will, that natural return on investment on its energy that is saying do things work. Now there's probably some other words, but I think that that's going to be the common translation. And if we're talking about energy output and do things work, and we talk about that bass chasing that minnow, or that cheetah chasing that gazelle, that's a peak energy output. So if we do a psychological profile of the bass and the cheetah, what state are they in when making that decision to chase?
Life or death.
Life or death. And would you consider that a serious decision?
Oh yeah.
Right. So there's where work and serious go together. And I think that that's an important thing to understand. As we grow new understandings, we're able to get some different contexts in our environment. We're able to add different concepts and different contexts to the existing concepts that we already have. Yes, able to add more context to the concepts we have and look at things from a different angle. And oh, by the way, that grows our autonomy also. We're doing our own investment. We're investing in our own mental habitat to get some more context around basically some popular terms in contemporary narrative, right? And if there's challenges in contemporary society and we say contemporary society is not working, or these things that people relate to in contemporary society is not working, these contemporary governments, this monetary system, this this fabricated definition of time based on a clock, if they're not working, well, what should we do? Well, maybe we should look at that term work. What do we think about when we look about that term work, right? If we're intentional about these things, and this is here's my advertisement. Here's a word from the sponsor. Business of Being Human. You'll hear me say that on my introduction. Business of Being Human is to look at ourselves and to look at these human challenges from a business type perspective, not capitalistic type quick fix and get perspective, but from a fair trade, from an understanding, a core understanding of looking at things objectively and using all our resources effectively and understanding the limits of the limits of what we've got to work with, and prioritizing and all these things that are found in contemporary business. So there's a lot of parallels, and humanity flows through everything. So, and business is one of those things. So if we look at let's look at the challenge and things aren't working. Oh, so what does that mean when we say things aren't working? What's the average societal understanding of the term work? And what I found is that most people don't have a super good relationship with that word. So let's try to rebuild that relationship with the word work, and for sure with the concept behind the word work. We're just using that word to reflect the concept. And so we went over some of these concepts of, does it work or does it not work? Is it right and wrong? I say work. Does it work or does it not work? What do I say? Let me try and say what I say. Does it work or does it not work is the original understanding of right and wrong. And so when we go through that, I think we can deconstruct from a morality or reverse engineer from a morality standpoint and say, oh, well, does this work? Is this working or does it not work? And when I say morality, I mean that on an individual basis with our own personal internal moral compass, not a prefab. That's something that everyone has to know for themselves. And sometimes that might align with the norm or the average, and sometimes it might not, but it's really important for us to understand where our individual moral compass is. And that individual moral compass is a really good place to feel if something's working or if it's not working. And that something is ourselves. So basically, I have another thing I like to say. It's not, we don't have feelings and emotions. We are feelings and emotions. So our feelings and emotions sense when we're not in line with ourselves. I'm going to say that again. Our feelings and emotions tell us when we're not in line with ourselves. Before that, I said, we don't have feelings and emotions. We are feelings and emotions. Our feelings and emotions tell us if we're right or wrong on a core level. Now, but wait, there's more, because that's just the feelings and emotions. If we say we have our physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, well, the feelings and emotions, that's our emotional, but we still got our physical. And this is how I say it. We've got our physical instinct. We've got 4 areas of information, 4 information receptors: physical, instinct, mental, cognitive thought process, emotional intelligence, what we just talked about, and spiritual, ancestral wisdom. So we feel something, but now let's not just use 25% of all of our information receptors. Let's pass it through everything. And so we feel something, and how does that resonate with my instincts? How does that resonate with our objective thought process? And energetic, the ancestral wisdom side. I like to stick with the objective thought process because I think that's the easiest. And that's the easiest to say, this plus this equals this. And you see here how this relates to this. And people say, yes, either, yes, I understand. No, I don't understand. When we start talking about instincts, spirituality, those things are super fluid, and even, emotion, but all those things go together. And it's important to recognize those and not get stuck in any one of those receivers, to know that we have these different facets in our information gathering process, and to use all those. But back to that core of that, our emotional intelligence tells us when we're in line with our own moral compass. And then there's some cognitive work. Is it my own moral compass, or is it a societal influence? And so, as we grow ourselves and we understand these, and I think that, we've all gone through that as kids. It's like, you know what? My parents told me this, and, I'm not sure that I exactly align with that. And how do we exactly align? And then that's when we connect to our individuality. And when we connect to our individuality, then we can see, how we work. What's our own specific niche, right? Back to some natural observations. Everything's got its niche. Everything's got its specific niche. And everyone as an individual has our specific niche. So it's super important to understand our individual nuances. Give us are extremely important to our own volition, and to our own autonomy. And our individuality naturally grows a healthy boundary with the collective. And one of our other workshops, Growing Healthy Boundaries, we talked a lot about boundaries with the collective. So if someone's not doing their introspect, they're more likely to get washed in, whatever the mainstream current is. And thus people looking for their place, quote unquote. And that understand, and so building a pad between ourselves, our own specific intricate individuality, and the collective is super important. That's super important distinction to make. And that requires work, and it requires intention to build that, to grow that boundary, and to understand these concepts, right? Here's the understanding again. It requires, paying attention to understand, oh, this concept. Okay. So, right. That collective influence. And I think that probably most people here have felt that collective influence too strong. I know I have. So it's important to, if we recognize these things again, and here's work, and it's work to grow healthy boundaries. It's work to buckle down and, be comfortable with engaging challenge. It's work to get ourselves into a place where we're transcending anxiousness about uncomfortable topics, right? If we talk about these things, these very human-centric things about trauma and people transmuting and transcending trauma, that's work. And it's serious with people that probably really haven't, and people in times that work in serious really had negative connotation. That those words work in serious had negative connotations. So transcending trauma, transcending anxiety is work, and it's serious work. So we have to build a better relationship with work and understanding all the value that can bring us. When we talk about the business of being human, I say business is an integral part of our species development, and way before printed currency and mass commoditization, things that we now know as business skills were integral to the development of our species, such hallmarks of humanity as communication, teamwork, leadership, understanding of value, bridging of cultures, process development. That understanding of value back to this instincts, and does it work and does it not work? That part of does it work and does not work, that's the value. That's our instincts understanding the value, what we'll call the value proposition. So bass and cheetahs understand what a value proposition is. And it is a serious situation. If we're going to expend a lot of energy to get food, and we might only get that opportunity once in a while, that, to do a little bit of anthropomorphizing there, that's understanding a value proposition. So how valuable is it for us to have a positive relationship with the concept of work and serious? I think it's pretty valuable. We just went over that. This is life and death. These are some core things in not just our species, but other species. And when we talk about aligning with our own individuality, does it work or does it not work? Are we there or are we not there? That's a core thing. So here's the boundaries with the collective part. If the collective doesn't have a good relationship with the words work and serious, and we're swept up with the collective, and it's like just everyone's like, oh yeah, fuck work sucks, hey, don't be too serious, and sucking in those narratives without understanding the full concept. See where it's going? So we said swept up in like the current of collective narratives. But it's kind of more like swept upstream without a paddle. So, and it's work to get out of that collective flow, right? There's so much collective because right? We're part of the collective. We are the collective. We're all connected, especially our species. And to understand that difference between our individuality and the collective is super, super important. And what did we say? We say the collective is so susceptible to negative connotations and to just going with the flow when there's no flow, or just all getting caught up into a mass with no direction. So it's important because they haven't done their individuality, because they haven't pursued their individualism as a collective, right? Slash colony. We'll go ahead and do the colonialism thing here. You know, it's lack of individuality. Lack of individuality. And of course, there's always the false narratives, and what do we see in contemporary society? It's the hyper individualism, where the individual can just do whatever they want without regard to the collective. But that's a reflection. That's a reflection of scarcity. That's a reflection of that individualism not being fulfilled. And there's a word for it. It is overcompensation. That's an overcompensation, this false bravado, this hyper individuality from a place that not really super tolerant of individuality. But wait, the individual grows the collective. So if the individual is not growing, how much is the collective not growing? Right? So we're all related to the collective, to the societal average in a habitat that's not very good at its individual personal development. So these are some things to understand. So that's some work to get out of that collective flow and to just be repeating collective patterns and collective ideas, and to be repeating collective ideologies, right? There's a natural thing when people start to move into adolescence, where they start to question things around them, and a natural inclination for offspring to move away from their adults, from their parents. There's that natural thing, and that's really a big transition point, when people transition from being more aligned with the collective back into their individuality. But then we've got infant, adolescent, adult, elder. Then and if we talk about cycles, and we're always cycling through our individual aspects and our connection with our individuality and our connection with the collective, and those things are a fluid cycle. And so I think we could say that, as infants were more aligned with the collective, as adolescents were more aligned with the with our individuality, then as adults we're more aligned with the collective. And oh yeah, as adults, then most of us are in working mode and really actively immersed in contemporary. And then as we get older, we cycle back to individuality. And then as we start getting ready to transition in the next life, a lot of people get into a heavy introspect, and who am I, and a lot of these things. A lot of people don't find that out till that last phase. A lot of people don't get into that till that last phase. But understanding these, and I'll bring up the natural laws here. So those of you that have been to a few of these classes, you're hearing these same things. Natural laws, connection to everything, sustainability, challenge, ebb, flow, cycles, balance. So we can see, natural laws where they flow through us as a species. And there's that cycle in that ebb and flow of our within our four periods of development as human, infant, adolescent, adult, elder. And we're going through that connection to the collective, the introspect, the collective, the introspect. But that's happening all the time. We might go through that cycle as individuals, who knows how many times per day. And again, no, science is not going to be able to set up an experiment to find that average. You just are on your own, folks. Freestyle. Old way. So, understanding these things. So it's work to pay attention to ourselves, but then we can see, oh, I'm more on an introspect mode, halfway through the day. And then later on through the day, oh, I'm more collective, and understand where we are and where the collective is, and understanding our own personal development versus the collective, and understanding these challenges that we're faced with, because that's our habitat. We're connected to the collective, understanding these challenges, but also understanding, like we said, the individual development adds to the collective. So here's the work part. But this is good work, right? When we do these things, we're contributing to the collective. It's an interesting and it's a beautiful observation that by building our personal development, we grow the collective. And there's so many things in life that, point back to that mirror that's been lost in contemporary society, that lesson of, that introspect. And we do the introspect, and then we contribute back, and we get information from the collective, and then we go and we process it back. There's that cycle again. There's that ebb and flow. And natural observations, the eagle goes out, gets fish, brings it back. So I always like that. I always like that example. So we're always bringing back, and of course that's a physical example, but the reality is that that's a very fluid concept and happening on many layers. So understanding this place of work, and all this is very serious. But within that work and serious, we find value, and we grow ourselves into entities that are capable of receiving value and of finding value. And we find it in ourselves, and then we share it with the community. Everything we're doing right now, this is trade. We're all trading. We're trading ideas. We're trading energy, trading concepts. We're growing ourselves. We're all eagles bringing fish back to the nest, and we're all eagles and eaglets at the same time, right? We're all infant, adolescent, adult, elder at the same time. We're not just going through that physical thing. That physical process is just a reflection, but just like we have our physical instinct, mental objective thought process, emotional intelligence, ancestral wisdom, we also have the four parts of us that are the infant, adolescent, adult, elder, and have all these different aspects. So there's actually lots of us in each one of us. There's lots of different things, and to say that, we're an organism on this planet, and then we're mammal, and then we're human. So to work at, realigning, to work at organizing our understandings and aligning with some natural processes and our own human-centric developmental processes is, is that not work, and is that not serious? So that's what I'm saying about having a good relationship with the words work and with the word serious. Um, any questions, comments at this time? Open it up for a minute here. Anyone? Anyone? If not, I'll keep rattling. I went through my notes. Just touched a little bit. I have a note that says transmuting and transcending colonial narratives surrounding work and serious. Differentiate between the word and the concept the word is reflecting. Right? So we touched on that a little bit at the beginning of the class. We've got the word, and then we've got the concept that the word's reflecting. And this is the end of last class too, where we went into this. When we're speaking to each other, the word, and I haven't found a better way to put this, but the word is kind of like the packaging of the concept when we're talking to someone. So I'm using these words and I have my own idea of this concept, or maybe I don't. Maybe I think I do, and I'm just repeating what other people have told me, but haven't gone through it myself. That's the thing to watch out for. So words, really important. I'll go through this, and this is kind of like another foundational understanding, is that words don't hold value. They only reflect value in certain circumstances up to a certain point. So to understand how someone's using their words and the word association, right? What word association does someone have with the concept? Someone has, if their main word association of work is, man, I got a day job that I hate, but I have to make money. Back again, how does that relate to their introspect? Because we have association with the words, and everyone here, I think it, maybe with the exception of Tom, speaks English primarily. So whatever concept we have is going to get translated back through that word, especially when we get busy. It's easy to say, oh yes, I have a great separation with my words and my concepts, and this work is this kind of work, and this work is my personal development work, and this work is it right and wrong, and all that. That's great. It's easy to be it's easy to have our alignment on right in a group of people that all have that intention, that are all paying attention and trying to maintain focus here. But what happens when we hop out of the bed in the morning and we're late for an appointment and then work? So that part is important to understand, that word association, that we've got these English words that have the potential to help us explain things, and also have the potential to let things in that aren't really ours due to our connection with the collective. So it's work, it's a process to go through and understand these things, and understanding where we're at as individuals, what state we're at, and when we're just taking in old word associations. And so when we have new word associations, when we have new understandings, we need to have those new understandings with our old understandings, so we have some semblance of context. And so we have some diversity in our concepts in our concepts related to those words. I think if we were to do another psychographic profile, a lot of people are using the words in relation to the dictionary definition. That's another aspect. Because there's the term experiential. What's our experiential information versus what the common narrative is? Those can be two different things. And if people are just using the words based on the dictionary without their own experiential, then they don't really know that word. They're just passing along the information. So it's really important for us to know the words and understand the concepts behind the words. So yeah, words don't hold intrinsic value. They just reflect value in certain circumstances up to a certain point, which is very fluid. It depends. If you're talking to a professional bass fisherman about bass fishing, his words around that subject probably going to hold more weight than if you're talking to, your average grocery clerk in New York City, right? So that's that fluidity of value associated with the words. And just to keep things interesting, there's a parallel that I always like to put in there, and that words and money both have that same commonality. Words and printed currency, they're both value placeholders, but they don't hold intrinsic value. They only reflect value in certain circumstances up to a certain point. Sometimes, if we pay attention to our energy, we can see that our words are not capable of reflecting the value that we're feeling. And that's an important thing to recognize. That's a naturally occurring boundary. So when the words are not capable of reflecting the energy or the concept, that means that tool, the word, is not useful in that certain situation. Might be useful for a lot of situations, but just not that certain situation. So words are tools, like a lot of other things. And as humans, being mature enough to understand the limits of our tools is critical. So understanding the limits of printed currency, just adding some more context here. Bear with me. Understanding the limits of printed currency and the limits of words is an important understanding to know. So understanding the limits of tools. Oh, same with medicine. Understanding the limits of medicine. There's all kinds of lessons from addiction here also, right? So when printed currency can't reflect the value of things intrinsic to life, like food, water, air, shelter, I like to say physical, mental, emotional, spiritual wellness. So those things have a value that supersedes the ability of the tool, printed currency, to reflect, especially in certain circumstances. And it's critical to know what those circumstances are. So contemporary society sacrificing the things intrinsic to life for value placeholder, printed currency. And so understanding the limits of words, especially when we're talking about the value of our mental, emotional, spiritual concepts, right? There's some concepts that words just, they're not capable of reflecting that value. Well, let's see here. How much time do I want to wander off course there? There's a lot of words that are not capable of reflecting the value, and that's an important lesson to make. It's important to understand the tools and the tasks that the tools were ostensibly made for, right? So words as tools there's first a concept. and then there's a word assigned to them. So understand the concepts there first. And then understand, well, is the word, how accurately is the word reflecting the concept when someone else is speaking? What's our relationship to the concept behind the word? Remember, this is about the words working serious. It's our relationship with the concepts behind the words working serious. So working serious are just the words. It's the concept that we need to have the association with. And it's important to understand the place of the words and then when the words aren't supporting the concept. So, just so happens that in the book I'm writing, chapter 4, there is a section on working serious. It is not finished, and these chapters are not through their final edit, but I thought I'd read some of these. Chapter 4, sneak preview, chapter 4 from the book Business of Being Human, rough cut. Work. The average person has two opposing things going on. They want to grow healthy, and they hold a negative connotation around the idea of work. Those two things are fundamentally incompatible because the pursuit of personal wellness is work. Real work is so much more than time clocks and paychecks. At the most fundamental level, work is related to process development. It has to do with trial and error. You get the idea. You attempt it, you reflect. Did you see the results you expected to see? In other words, did it work? If not, you tweak your process and try again until you find something that does. The drive to work is part of our core essence as living beings because we want to be challenged. Want in parentheses because of the internal nature to be challenge is what drives work. So there's a challenge that we need to engage and figure out. So the challenge drives work. And that's what we say that challenge is a natural law. That's why, because it's like a key motivational aspect naturally occurring. We want to be engaged with something on a deeply meaningful level. We want to set goals and accomplish them. So on that deeply meaningful level, that's going to resonate with serious also. So we have to understand that's serious, right? When we're like, to me, this is serious conversation, but it's beautiful. It's engaging. It's challenging. I'm trying to not wander too far off course, trying to kind of, stick on track a little bit, trying to make a little bit of sense when I can. But that's serious. I'm engaged, and that engagement, not to be confused with other forms of engagement, right? So there's another word, that the engaging the challenge, the challenge of presenting a concept is a core, I think a core component to our wellness. We need to be engaged. We need to be challenged. We want to be engaged with something on a deeply meaningful level. We want to set goals and accomplish them. Overcoming challenges to accomplish our goals always involves work and intentional focus of energy. But our sick society has produced a stunted conception of work where it's associated with involuntary servitude and with having to make money to survive. As a result, we have habituated or maladapted to approach every challenge thinking, how much work is this going to be for me? And that's the part where a lot of people get stuck on their personal development right there, because they translate personal development to a lot of work, but they translate it in the negative connotation. And it's as simple as that for that part. People are engaging their personal development because it represents work. And that's why tonight's workshop topic is working serious. So, on the one hand, this reflects an instinctual calculation of effort versus reward to ensure we receive the most return for our energy output. As we discussed in the previous chapter, which you'll have to wait another year or so, but trust me, it's there. This is a survival skill. This is how all life functions. And that's what we talked about, the bass chasing a 2-inch minnow versus a 4-inch minnow, and the cheetah chasing the gazelle, and that natural connection to our energy investment and our energy trade and distribution and where that's going. So as we discussed in the previous chapter, this is a survival skill. This is how all life functions, by that calculation of effort versus reward. The problem is that in the case of humans, our egos get in the way. Ego throws a wrench into natural processes by focusing on wants instead of needs. And so in contemporary society, obviously, it's a common say, well, we need to make money, we need jobs, and like, oh well, if you we have to have these fossil fuels because it's jobs. We have to be cutting down trees because it's jobs, which is obviously, not taking the whole concept into account. So yeah, our ego, and what I say ego is wants without context, our want without context. It's great that we have a want, but how does it relate to everything around us? And so, how does what I want relate to my overall well-being, which is intrinsically connected to the well-being of everything else around us too? Hi, Mila.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Sorry I'm late.
That's all right. Glad to have you skip in any time.
Thank you.
So understanding the wants versus needs. This psychological profile doesn't come out of nowhere. It's a product of our toxic habitat, aka contemporary society, collective unconscious, colonialism, those kind of things. I'm ad-libbing here a little bit too, by the way. The idea that we should get what we want or need without working for it is a delusion and entitlement. In the real world, it takes work to get things done. Our egos say, that sounds like a lot of work. I'd rather go out and have fun. But what do we really mean by fun? This sounds like addiction. Because what is fun compared to core level contentment? Work and the results we get from work are a core satisfying function. Through our work, we produce value that we can trade with others, which allows us to contribute to the community. More work, more growth, more meaning, more purpose, more satisfaction. From this perspective, working on our personal wellness is infinitely more satisfying long-term than, quote unquote, having fun. The failure to recognize this is evidence of disconnect from the foundations of our wellness. So within all that work, we still have to understand the natural laws of ebb and flow. So another thing with negative connotations of work in contemporary society is that lack of respecting ebb and flow, and that we need rest time. And contemporary society says everyone 9 to 5. But if you're not naturally a 9 to 5 type person, some people are more, evening or night owls. We might have different things going on in our personal lives that aren't conducive to a consistent energetic output. And of course, capitalism is more, go, 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 no breaks, no rest. And there's a huge influence in contemporary society to not rest with catastrophic results. So it's important that, within our personal development, there's also rest. And if we're paying attention to our internal moral compass, we'll find natural cycles flowing through, and where we get rest and we get refreshed from the work. So that's a key. Is the work working? Is the work we're doing, is it refreshing, or is it burning us out? Because that's a huge alignment factor there. Let's see what.
I thought.
So, so that's more, intention to give to ourselves. Is the work we're doing, is it satisfying and refreshing, or is it burning us out? So that's important. So serious. Here's the word serious. When somebody tells you we need to have a serious talk, you're likely to assume they're going to say something you don't want to hear, right? Something you would consider bad or negative. Most people would. Serious is a scary word because we're used to hearing it in contexts where something is opposed on us by others, basically saying that we did something that someone else wasn't happy with. We are quick to associate the word with things that are important to other people, but not necessarily to us, like paying bills or completing homework, or even getting in trouble with the expectation of punishment, like being sent to the principal's office. It seems that most of us choose to use the word serious when something has gone wrong, using it reactively instead of proactively. This is the opposite of how it should be. So there's another key concept in that serious, proactive versus reactive. And most people in contemporary society are in a compulsive reactive state and looking for quick fix instead of being proactive and only buckle down with themselves when they're in a time of extreme strife or trauma, when trauma forces us to look inward. But by being proactive, like everyone here is engaging in personal wellness on a Friday night, we can start to understand these things and become efficient at being human, business of being human, and be proactive to be, instead of reactive compulsive, to be proactive and conscious. And there's that word conscious, to be conscious, to be aware, to take in everything. And of course, lessons from traditional societies, traditional with a capital T, regularly implemented challenge into their cultures, instead of being run over by challenge because contemporary society doesn't engage it and is trying, and it has this negative connotation with work, and is contemporary society as a whole works super hard so they don't have to work. They work so they don't have to work. So doesn't take a PhD psychologist to see that there's some misunderstandings around that. Contemporary society works so it doesn't have to work. When people say they work for the weekend, they work for vacation, or people work their whole life so they can retire. That ain't right, obviously. So there's the last part. That is, we associate seriousness with menial, colonized, domesticated existence, when what we should be taking seriously is the challenge of life or death itself. In this sense, contemporary society is deeply unserious. And there is a connection between this unseriousness and ego narcissism. Something is only serious if the narcissist says it. The overuse or misuse of the term by authorities implies that we can't judge for ourselves what is serious and what isn't, right? That's imposed law. This dysfunctional mentality that operates according to the abstract wants of ego is essentially what we mean by scarcity mindset. Want without context is what drives narcissistic system, capitalism, colonialism, etc., to satisfy its wants without regard for the effects it will have on the broader environment and the bigger picture. A narcissist avoids accountability by avoiding introspect, by not going through the full and objective thought process. Just like we're susceptible to the psychological manipulation and emotional pressure of a narcissist, we're susceptible to the many ideologies of contemporary society that urge us to shortcut our thought process to get what we want. That means we're not receiving as much value as we would by going through the full process. One of the consequences of lacking a comprehension of the challenge of life or death is that we're not used to taking threats seriously, right? So in contemporary society, a lot of the challenges of life or death have been bred out on a societal level, right? If we look at how our species developed with challenge of life or death and threats from predators and that fight for survival, and now the kind of false sense of abundance, which is of course sacrificing the future so people can have unlimited resources right now. The result is that we're not used to engaging real challenge. And so challenge itself has a negative connotation too. That's a whole nother very important thing that we talked about, engaging challenge and the negative association with challenge. And these things, these core life understandings, like the place of challenge, is not, that understanding is not very readily found in contemporary society. It's when we don't take challenge seriously, when we aren't conscientious of threats, that's when the consequences catch up with us. It's easy enough for everyone to agree that a grizzly bear is a threat to our existence. It's harder for people to get behind the idea that overpopulation is a threat to our existence. But Biology 101 teaches us that, like any invasive species, we can only grow to a point before everything implodes. We can observe this reality over and over again in nature. And we've got a couple of examples there that I won't go into now. But that understanding challenge and embracing challenge and doing that work and being proactive is the way to regain our wellness, is the main thing. Because even the one of the big embracing challenge, some of the big parts of embracing challenge workshop was that by embracing challenge, by doing the work, by taking some of these things seriously, we actually grow our own individuality, and we grow our own contentment. There's a naturally occurring contentment that comes from doing the work that needs to be done and addressing real challenges. There's no contentment ever happens with the disregard of challenges, especially disregard of challenge of life or death. Chapter 5, how do we improve our relationship with the words work and serious? How can we look at the concept of work on a more holistic scale and transmute the concept of involuntary servitude? The common narrative for work is good, you got to work. Then you can buy things to feel better. But the people that say that are, one, offer undereducated in human development motivation, and two, they want you to do something for them to make money so they can buy things for themselves to make themselves feel better, which is egocentric pursuits and not a holistic understanding of life and human development. This too reflects a lack of structure. We're missing the structure that leads us to positively associate the words work and serious with personal development. But if we keep our minds open, we can grow new context around these words and begin using them as tools for personal wellness. That's what we talked about a lot in this evening's workshop. Work doesn't have to mean involuntary servitude. Work can actually be a force of freedom and personal development. Work is an opportunity to build skill, understand and implement process, and engage socially with others. Work teaches us autonomy and offers a sense of accomplishment. It is a source of physical and mental activity and challenge. It is a way for us to turn our energy into value. Work is one of the best ways to engage in physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects of ourselves. Consider it a BMP, best management practice, for Homo sapien. Oh, business of being human, by the way. In spiritual circles, there's often an emphasis on transcending ego. It is spoken of as almost a moral imperative. But in reality, the moral imperative is simply an outgrowth of the instinctual recognition that our energy flow simply functions better when we transcend our ego. So to not get stuck solely behind our wants, but to understand how our wants fit in with the bigger picture and to defer to alignment with the bigger picture versus our wants on an individual basis is what that's saying there. Again, this is not the final edit. Doing what's best for the planet, regardless of human habitation, encourages lack of ego and helps our own energy flow better, right? So what we're doing is we're looking at how we work as humans, business of being human. How do we actually function as an organism on this planet? When we put energy towards the wellness of the whole planet, regardless of human habitation, we create more and better distribution channels for our energy to cultivate growth. In other words, we get back what works. So the catch is that if we cared for everything else, we won't have to worry about our own survival. So that's a naturally occurring factor. In essence, work means investing our energy to grow something of value. What we invest into our work, we receive back in value. Work is necessary by nature. On a practical level, we can create better narrative around the idea of work. Look for little things because they all add up. Instead of, I got to work to make money, you can make a list of positive things about work. Even if you're flipping burger at McDonald's, not that there's anything wrong with that, you can find ways that you are helping yourself and others. Even washing dishes is skill building. There's networking. There's relationship skills. Nothing doesn't matter. Keep in mind, if we do a lot of work, then we can expect a lot of reward. Part of work is growing our ability to see what works, what functions. What's the energy level we feel when something is working on the physical plane? Can we feel this type of energy on our mental, emotional, and spiritual planes? We can feel when we're in the zone or on the right track. And here's the serious. Being serious or taking things seriously means engaging the challenge seriously is wellness. It rebonds us with natural process. If we're doing everything we can, then we don't have to be anxious about the outcome. When we align with the challenge, no matter what it is, growth happens, wellness happens. By taking challenge seriously, we engage ourselves more fully and more safely on every level. By being serious with ourselves, we invest in others, and investing in ourselves builds our confidence, our character, and our resolve. When we see that we are able to deconstruct and reverse engineer problems and use our logic to solve them, that is empowering. I think that that is an important thing to recognize, that by embracing challenge and by that grows our skills. And when we grow our skills, that's empowering and that's wellness. Having developed skill sets around untangling all of the misgivings in contemporary society and all of the human-centric challenges is empowering. If we understand ourselves, that's empowering. It takes work and it takes serious work, but it's empowering. Taking things seriously means strengthening our connection to our most fundamentally human skill set, objective thought process. Taking something seriously means doing the meditation, transmuting anxiety, and thinking about what's really going on. This means applying ourselves, focusing our energy on ourselves. It means being serious about the attention you're giving to your own thought process. If you give energy to yourself and take that energy and grow it, that's the best ROI you can get. ROI, return on investment. If you give yourself energy, take that energy and grow it, that's the best ROI you can get. It's generating value in-house, to use the business terms. So invest your energy in yourself and you'll be okay. Invest it in your thought process because that's the core essential thing that humans need that is disrupted in contemporary society. Instead of putting a penny away a day toward your goals, you'd be better off investing 10 minutes a day toward your personal wellness. Make the first step on your journey to repair your relationship with the concepts behind the words work and serious, because your wellness journey is going to be serious work, but it will be worth it. Right now, there are plenty of things that are threats to the planet as a whole, to other life forms on this planet, to human life on this planet. To rise to these challenges, we have to be conscious of the gravity of the situation and act accordingly. Deciding where to put our energy, which is our first resource and a finite one, is a serious decision. We have to buckle down and take ourselves, our health, and our wellness seriously, our mental health, our spiritual health, our physical health. We will have to engage fully on every level to put in maximum energy to accomplish things that are in alignment with the natural system. Personal development is serious work. So, of course, it requires effort from us. It requires us to use our energetic power to visualize and hold our anxiety at bay so we can transcend it and get out of a reactive state. Making decisions is work. Disassociating ourselves from false narratives is work. Being intentional is work. Everything is work. Luckily, the amount of effort we put in will directly correlate to the results we see. So that is some of the writings that I have that on the words work and serious and the importance of that topic. Again, that is not the final edited version. So some of it was a little bit choppy. I apologize for that, but I thought it'd be worth reading. Work and serious. It's important to have a good relationship with the concepts behind those words as we went through. I hope that everybody got something out of this and it was a valuable investment of your energy this Friday evening. And that concludes tonight's wellness workshop, Work and Serious. I'm Kraig, Business of Being Human, MyBizGuide. Thanks for joining. I'm going to cut off the Facebook now and get on to the live Zoom after party. So Facebook, appreciate you. Appreciate everybody hanging out, watching later, all that kind of stuff. And we will not see you because you're eavesdropping, but please stop by and drop in next time.